All right, greetings everybody. I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I was trying to wait on a few people, but I guess they'll get here when they get here. Um, so I can go or no? Oh, I guess I'm live. Um, so good evening everyone. So today's forum of sorts is designed to speak about something that I think many people in the community have been hearing about, which is the topic of the SROs within the WPS 60 school district. As it stands right now, I think if you've been following the news, um, where we are is the SROs have been in the school district for a while. Actually, police have been in the school district over 50 years, something I didn't even know. So the police have been in the district for a very long time, but I guess the title of SRO is kind of new. And I think that's where the confusion comes from with that topic, but they've been in there for a long time. Like it or don't like it, they just have. So where we are right now is the city has taken a position that the SRO's bill, which I guess was a particular dollar amount, which we'll get to in a second, the school district needs to foot that bill, more of it. Okay. I'm going to go through the list here. I want to say this, right, because it's very important to know. You might wonder, what does this have to do with the topic? But it has a lot to do with it, because some people would argue that one of the reasons for the safety officers to be in the building anyway is for the safety of the children. What a lot of people don't know is that where the school district is concerned, this loco parentis, which is a Latin word that translates into the place of a parent. And what that says in plain language is that whenever you have students in the district, the school district officials are supposed to treat all of the children pretty much as if they were their own. They're supposed to handle them that way. So when, for instance, there is an issue with a student where law enforcement needs to be involved, the thought process is that the school district is going to treat that child as if it's their own. And if the police come in to speak with that person, they want to make sure that the kid's rights have been taken care of. That's what this says. Where this all came from, I literally have had dozens upon dozens of calls from people who have seen this topic on the table over the past week or so. It just hit really quickly this past week. And so many individuals, strangely, didn't even know what an SRO was. I found that interesting. So this is what an SRO is. School resource officer. They're sworn law enforcement officers responsible for safety and crime prevention in schools. The local police department typically employs SROs who work closely with schools and administrators in an effort to create a safe school environment. The difference separating an SRO from other police officers in theory is that they have some special training on how to work with youth. You can't treat kids like adults. They're not adults, right? And that's part of the problem with a lot of people is that you try to, some of these young people, they're a little different. They make you think that they believe themselves to be adults. They're not, right? They talk a certain way. They talk tough to you. They'll cuss you out. They'll do whatever they do. But that doesn't make them an adult because they say the same words. We all hear that their brain isn't fully developed. Doesn't matter that some of the actions are the same as adults. You have to treat them like the children that they are. So the SROs being in the buildings seems to be a debate that's on the table whether they should be or they should not be. This conversation is one where I hope the topic will be addressed fully, where we can have everybody give their opinions about the topic. Should the SROs be in the building? And if they should be in the building, who should pay the bill? That question is on the table. So here you have what I said earlier. Law enforcement has been in WPS 60 over 50 years. There have been 2 S.R.Os assigned to the district every year, one at Brookside campus, one at Washington campus. These numbers, they fluctuate depending on who you talk to. It's funny, I see we got Ms. Pope in the room, and she definitely would be the one to know the numbers. And if these are in error, please correct Ms. Pope. From 2016 to 2023, the district supposedly paid $70,000 a year for the 2. Last year, 121. The district is offering to pay 150 for this school year, and the city is saying 350. Okay? So with those numbers, there's a little bit more to it as well, right? The actual bill for for a police officer is a little over $400,000, right? That's how much it costs for an officer to be on the streets. We have 2. You can do those numbers yourself. Some people argue that the portion of the bill that the district is supposed to pay is appropriate. Some people would argue that it is too little for what is happening. That's a debate that we can go over and have that conversation. Who's that? Oh, what's up, Clyde? Before you do, take a mic.
How much is the safety officers making overall in the school? Yeah, I said, how much is the safety officers making, the security that the district hire?
Staff members or district personnel are in the room. They would be better able to answer that question. I don't want to misrepresent the number. Does anyone from the district want to answer that question? How much is, my understanding, Clyde, it's a roundabout number, but I think it's under $30,000 is what the safety officers are compensated. So it's somewhere around that range. Maybe somebody can actually Google it in a minute, because I'm sure it's public information. But it's definitely a lot different than the police officers. This point, school resource officers are responsible for investigating violations of criminal law, and SRO's sworn duty to enforce that law does not contradict the need for the SRO to be a positive role model, but rather supports it. It is important to note that the SROs are not school disciplinarians. SROs are not involved in investigating. SROs should not be involved in investigating school rule violations. My apologies. SROs are not involved in investigating school rule violations, such as student cheating on a test. Violations of school rules are the responsibility of the principal and the faculty. So just for clarity, there's a backstory here with me. I've been dealing with WPS 60 and the S.R.O issue from the beginning, right? My position from the beginning, just for clarity, has been that SROs are misused in the district. SROs have no business involved in disciplinary issues within the district. That's not their job. The SROs, to me, should be called upon when something rises to a particular level and has gotten out of control. And only then should they be involved, or there is a clear violation of the law that's taken place. And then you can reach out to those individuals with, you can reach out to law enforcement the same way that anybody else would. You call 911. That, to me, is the way that probably should be. But what we have now that I've seen personally at Brookside campus is you'll have the S.R.O brought into the room with a regular fight in the school. You'll have the S.R.O brought into the room with just basic things that are going on in the school. And to me, in talking to many of the young people that I've spoken to, the S.R.Os, they feel that the S.R.O is someone there to harm them. Many of them feel that way. They're threatened by the S.R.O because you see that badge, you see that radio, you see that gun, and it's intimidating to the average one of these young people. So if a culture climate specialist, the principal, or whoever calls into the room a cop, some people would argue it's gotten really deep now. I probably want to say some things that I wouldn't normally say because I'm a little nervous. I don't want to go to jail. If the parent was present, that child probably wouldn't say anything. If local parentis was in play, someone would stop that kid from saying something. Why? Because we don't know what's going to come out that child's mouth. There are situations where kids get into fights in the streets. They're involved in all type of things in the streets, and they end up coming and bringing it to school. If you investigate that to find out what's at the heart of the problem, and that young person reveals something that was actually criminal, that may have taken place elsewhere, the kid's Fifth Amendment rights have been disappeared. They're gone. You just circumvented their Fifth Amendment rights. Very important to think about. Hopefully that just carries over into this conversation. Fifth Amendment. In layman's terms, self-incrimination, right? We want to protect everybody, especially the young people, from incriminating themselves in something without having counsel present. It's a very important point. We all have that right. Why in the world would we think the kids should deserve it less? So we don't want that. And for me, the confusion sometimes where the S.R.O. is concerned is that with the S.R.O. present, some of the young people get to a point where they get so comfortable with the officer that they forget it's an officer. They think it's just a regular staff member. And you end up talking about things that you otherwise wouldn't be talking about if your parent was present. At the same time, the other side of the argument is that these people, these police officers come in and they make young people feel safer. It really is dependent on the parents and how you view it. Because if you see it a certain way, then you have to speak up to your public officials, which would be your alderman, and you tell them how you feel about the topic. And if they look at you as their constituent, which they have to, then they'll let that carry over into their deliberations when they're behind closed doors. We have to get to a point where we realize that it's necessary to protect these kids. And if we're going to do that, it's not just about protecting their physical body. It's about protecting their rights as well. And you can be as comfortable with these kids as you want to be. Don't manipulate that, would be my argument. Here we go. Let's talk about it. These are some of the things here, aside from what has already been talked about. What we want to do is to give the mic to whoever wants it. And we want to talk about the topic here, which is, on the surface, who should pay the bill, because that's what's on the table. Who should pay the bill for the S.R.O.? Some people would say, should the S.R.O. even be in play? Because right now, I think most of us know, starting the school year, there were no S.R.Os in the schools. Was that good, bad? Did it cause more fights? Did you see no difference at all? Is there an argument to be made that that means something? Did it play into the conversation at all? All of that stuff that's for conversation right now. There's a city council meeting tomorrow, school board meeting coming up. My hope is that whether it be those who are in this room or those that are looking at us streaming live, this conversation will spark something in someone where they'll take this conversation back and say, you know what, now that you mention it, or I didn't know that. Maybe that'll happen. So however you guys want to do it, this is a freestanding conversation. If you raise your hand, if you want to ask a question, there's a mic. We ask that you wait on the mic so that those who are looking online can hear your question. If not, I'm just going to go through these questions and just point. So anybody have a question that they want to pose or a comment? She's first, and then Clyde come after you.
I want clarification of exactly who's training these officers to be in that S.R.O role and what kind of training they're getting. Because there is definitely that gray line of the, right now with how it's being used, of are they an officer or are they really the S.R.O? And they're from my experience, it's misused. And at what point should the district inform a parent of an S.R.O being involved in a discussion with a student? It's also, what is the procedures for the district on having those S.R.Os? Should they be out in the hallway having this discussion? Where are they having this discussion? Is it being videotaped that parents can be able to ask to see what's going on? And how we can make sure that, especially that Fifth Amendment right, is being presented to the student, that they have the right to know they don't have to answer anything without a parent there if they do not feel comfortable, or who will be their advocate in that school, because I don't think it's being used at all.
So let me say, and I probably should have started with this, this meeting, this forum was last minute. It wasn't planned. I want to put that on the table because I don't want it to come across like, because people aren't here, that somehow is some negative thing that you can get from it. This all started Thursday. The planning of this thing was literally just a few days ago, Thursday, due to all the phone calls that came into us here at the foundation. So from there, we started the process of reaching out to people in the community to see who wanted to come. Initially, transparency. Initially, we were going to do a panel. We couldn't get the right people to agree, so therefore this was a backup. The questions that you pose would be better answered from district personnel. Superintendent Placencia called me directly. She said that she would have liked to be here, but she wasn't able to come because it was last minute. It's a Sunday. You know, you can't really knock that. I have to. So I want to be clear on that. That said, for me to try and answer the question that you posed as far as training of those S.R.Os, they're supposed to receive extra training for what they're doing in dealing with young people. The police department also isn't here, so that would be something that I would want to give to them as an answer. But by you speaking on it is something that most likely we can encourage them to make sure they bring that information to the school district and to the parents so that they can get the answer to that question, because it is a very important question. Insofar as cameras and whatnot being used, I think that too is a valid question, because if you have an officer involved in the streets, certain things trigger your body cam, right? Like your lights going off. It automatically means that your body cam is supposed to come on. Well, what happens when you're in a school setting and you're called into what is supposed to be an incident, and a parent wants to go back and look at the body cam footage of why you were involved in the situation? Very valid question. I think that because this is recorded, I probably wouldn't be telling my staff to write down these questions because we can always go back to it. But these are very valid points that we would definitely go back and address ourselves, and we'll come up with a way to bring those answers back to you guys ourselves. And I think I addressed your 2 points. Clyde?
Well, Illinois has laws, and one of the things is when you talk to a young adult, anybody under 17, a parent is supposed to be there, or somebody that represent. What these S.R.Os did, I'm gonna go back to a case, which y'all know what I'm gonna bring up, the one where the boy was playing basketball, and he was out in Riverside, Stevenson School at the time of the shooting. and somebody got shot at the dollar store up here on Grand Avenue. And some crazy guy that worked for the city went and told them that it was Marcellus. So they went and pulled him out of school. Did not call his parents. They had 2 officers there. One was supposed to be to follow the law, to work for the child. Now, how can the police work for the child when they tell you early in the morning, in order for, we'll let you go home if you sign this confession. Knowing the child haven't ate breakfast, they go to McDonald's and get him a hamburger. He think he getting ready to go home. He signed a confession. He locked him up. And there's a law that says that you could not even question that child without representation now. S.R.O. said they had reputation there. Well, who was the reputation? Another police officer. Now, how can the police represent a child and also represent the city? I'm going to tell you, I don't care for the mayor, but I think she's right. I don't think no S.R.O. need to be up in their school. That's why I asked the question, how much do the safety officers get paid? Because they job is a safety officer. And if it get out of hand, they could call the police and then have the school call the parent. Let's do the work. Nobody should be paying this bill. But I still say the mayor was wrong to up the price to double it, but she the mayor. And y'all voted in. That's all I got.
So I've spoken to the school district administration. I've spoken to the city on this topic, just for clarity. The argument that's being put out there is that the school district was informed over the past couple of years that the city wasn't going to continue to foot that bill. That was their position, right? And if that is the case, then the school district has been warned that this was coming. From the school district's perspective, what it looks like is they see this as just a mutual partnership between them and the police department, and everything is going up in cost, so they're willing to pay a larger portion of it, but nonetheless, these officers are going to be paid anyway. Keep in mind, the city has a number of people, a number of police officers that are already, they're on payroll, right? So whether they were in the school or on the streets, they are going to get paid no matter what. So the argument can go whichever way you choose to look at it. But that, to your point, Mr. Springs.
Thank you. Good job on holding this. We worked together with some different incidents with S.R.Os, his incident as well. I'm not going to say that young man's name, but some of them have left the school. You could have a good officer or you could have a bad officer. Having a bad officer in the school is detrimental to the children. If you have an officer that is overzealous in the school, and I'm not making up a pretend situation, this is a real situation, where a young man was facing criminal charges. He was in a fight versus 8 other young men. The police officer, not an S.R.O., the police officer jumped in on his back and was upset because they could not restrain him. The police officer then had a vendetta against this child for more than a year. This is real. This happened in Waukegan. So we have to find out, do we want to have people with guns in the educational situation? Do we need people with guns, tasers, and handcuffs? If they're there to be a mentor, okay, check your gun in. If they're there to be a mentor, check your badge in, check your handcuffs in, check your taser in. Let's not get caught up with who's the friend. Let's not get caught up with officer friendly and forget that they are police officers. Don't get caught up with that. Now, if this is only about the money, then we have no more to talk about because that ain't no money. We have to understand that's nothing. That's nothing. That amount of money is easily wiped away from the city and from the school. That's a nothing amount of money. Well, I make this much. It doesn't matter how much you make or don't make. That's a nothing amount of money when it comes to the city of Waukegan and to the public schools. That's a nothing amount. If the issue is whether they should be there at all, then that is something that we have to say that, hey, we went to the school. When we go to the school, what impact do we have? Do they need more mentors? Do they need more people that their presence stops some of it? I do know that some of the SROs become the hangout place. I'm not making it up. Ask the children over the past 4 years. It becomes the hangout place. I don't want to go to class today. When did the police office become part of education? We could Google it, go on your phone, Google it. Ask the police officers that are in the school which one of them thinks their job is education. It's like 5% or less. So the majority of them think their job is to enforce the law in the school with our children, to enforce the law. They don't have that at Stevenson. They don't have that at Warren. They don't have that at Highland Park. Then why do we have that at Waukegan? And you hear Mr. McIntyre talking about school to prison pipeline all the time. Come on. So if there's a way to get rid of the SROs, I say absolutely. One more thing. The SROs help somebody that's scared of our children. The people that got a 22% pay raise, some of those people that got a 22% pay raise are scared of our children and would rather be able to call someone with a gun to go deal with the Dwayne Springses of the world at 16, 17. They would be more comfortable having someone with a gun and a taser to go handle Anthony McIntyre's at 15, 16. So we need to understand why they're there, and very little of it is for the children.
So just to sort of piggyback on, Ms. Briscoe is next, just to piggyback on what Coach is talking about, it spreads the conversation into a more broad conversation when you get into the point of should we have SROs in the building in the first place? Because he makes a valid point. The money topic that we're talking about right now, I mean, really, come on, is that really is superficial as an argument. For those people who, I'm gonna be a little bit more specific with some of the things I just heard. So the gentleman that he's talking about facing 8 people on his back, where you had some 15 individuals who were criminally charged for a fight in school. And this individual that we're talking about, man, so much work went into turning this kid around. Tremendous work went into it. And simply because he happens to be, he doesn't look his age at the time. This cat got muscles coming out his fingernails. I mean, he's a big old boy, you know what I mean? And he was happened to be in this situation, and the officer who got involved, now look at how dangerous this is. This officer is in the middle of a melee. It's got to be 30, 40 kids there. Falls on the ground. In the midst of falling on the ground, breaks one's watch. No real physical harm to the person. If there were kids there who had this in mind, they could have taken her gun. Because you're in the middle of 40 some odd individuals all fighting. And you with your weapon with no backup in the way that you would if you weren't in the school, somebody could have taken your weapon from you. What happens now? There was no guns in the school, but now there is, and you don't have control over it. In the midst of that, between myself and Coach Springs, we're in court after court talking to parent after parent, trying to protect these kids when all this was a fight. And in the midst of it, you got criminal charges. And you end up with people like myself and Coach Springs coming from the streets to come into the school to try and do what the people who are in the school are paid to do anyway. So the question becomes, at that point, should we have an S.R.O., or is it simply a matter of giving extra training to the safety officers that are already there? Do we give them extra training? Do we put more of that money into them? That's a valid question. Some of those safety officers don't even make enough money to take care of their families, to Clyde's point. Ms. Briscoe.
So for those of us who attend the school board meetings, right there, I mean, Anthony, you were there, and we're there all the time, and you know, so if you remember, I can't remember if it was like a year ago or a couple of years ago, there was a survey that was sent out to the parents, right? Because we've had this discussion about SROs. And if I remember, the consensus that came back, and the majority came back from the parents, that they wanted the SROs in the school, and that's the reason why the district continued with the SROs. Maybe it's time again to revisit that, because I can't remember exactly what the percentages were, but it was pros and cons, and it was a lot of discussion about their role, their responsibility. To your point, are they crossing the line? Truly, what is their responsibility, right? So maybe it's time for us to, for the parents, I mean, the parents really need to come back out and say whether or not they agree that they should or should not be there. And I know that there's a school board meeting on this Tuesday. And so the parents need to come back out, and I appreciate you having this, because for those people who don't know the role of a SRO, after what you've explained, at least they know what a SRO does, what their responsibility is, and they can come and voice whether or not they think that the district should or should not. And then, if I remember, they also got feedback from the students, and to your point, the students said that they felt threatened by the officer, and the question came up, well, can an officer come into the school and don't be dressed in uniform? Maybe that would help, you know, with the appearance, right? So there was a lot of discussion around this when it came up before, and to my point, maybe it just needs to come back again to the surface. And to the point where my good friend Coach said, $350,000 if you're talking about the safety of kids, I agree. That is nothing. I mean, whoever needs to pay it just need to pay it if it means that this is what we need in order to have safety for our kids, if it's decided that the SROs need to be in the schools.
Thank you. To Jessamine, you're next with the mic. To the point of the survey that was sent out, I honestly haven't seen anyone who saw it. We can technically make numbers say whatever we want. So I don't know of anyone who actually saw the survey. So I think that's a valid point. I think when you reach out to a snapshot population, where maybe, because the way they do these things is these surveys, like you can take this room and do a survey of this room, and this is supposedly to be a representation of Waukegan at large. I'm not sure if that's a fair assessment, and I don't know where you go and get the numbers from, or where your audience is that you target. But I promise you, many of these surveys, the people I talk to, these surveys, I mean, it's literally night and day. It's a totally different view by these individuals that come into my space on a day-to-day. They don't agree with.
That's a fair point, and that's something that the district needs to understand, right?
You need the mic if you don't mind.
And that's a fair point, and that's something that the district needs to understand, because it's based upon the data from that survey, which is what they use, right, in order to keep the SROs in there. But that needs to be voiced, right, to the district when they consider these SROs. Well, who are you sampling? Where are these people coming from, you know? So that's a fair point. Thank you.
Yeah, and fortunately, we do have representation from Waukegan School Board here. I see Vice President Hannah is in the room, and I'm sure she's taking notes over there, and she'll take some of that back to her colleagues, and that'll be a point that will be made there. Jessamine?
I think my biggest concern, I have a son that's going into his freshman year in high school right now. And when I think about them being in the schools, when I go to Aldi or the mall, when I see security, they don't have a gun on them. So why is it that you need a gun going into a school? Are you for my child, or are you protecting my child? Is that the reason that you have it, or is it going to be used against the kids? Is that something that you need to let these parents know? My son goes to Zion, Ben, and I think I got mail all summer long, but nothing in regards to the security at the doors, nothing in regards to a police officer being there, nothing about that. But that kind of triggers in my head, what if somebody accidentally, even not even accident, on purpose, grabbed the security's gun or whatever, the S.R.O's gun or whatever the case may be. When I think about going to the mall and all the mall shootings and things of that nature, in my mind, they would be the ones that need weapons like that. But what is your reason for being in the school? Like Clyde said earlier, are you representing my child? Are you speaking? Are you being a voice for them? Are you advocating for this child and whatever the situation is? Or are you for the police department? And we know that sometimes these police are trained to just close a case. You did it, I don't care. I'm gonna get you to say that you did it, whatever the case may be. What is your goal? And I think that needs to be relayed to the parents as well.
So valid point. We got to be careful, right? I think it was Columbine, don't quote me, but I think in Columbine, some people argue that having a school resource officer armed in the schools will serve as a deterrent. It'll stop people that's thinking about coming into the school from coming in and doing something crazy. That's some people's position. But in Columbine, these officers, so I'm notorious for having a story. I got a few stories. I'm gonna be honest, I used to be borderline anti-cop. I've been through too many things in the streets. I didn't have a good relationship with certain police officers, and they represented a department. So I'm at a point now where I'm nowhere near anti-cop, right? I'm not there. And the reason that I'm not is because an officer actually took me somewhere which was to an obstacle course. And when he took me to that obstacle course, it put me in a different space. They put me in front of the obstacle course. It was a door, and it was like a maze in there. And these things was gonna pop out. They got in my ear and they said, so here's the situation. The bank was just robbed. The suspect is between 18 and 26 years old. He's African American. He's bald-headed. He's 200 pounds. He's in there. Go get him. That's what they said to me in my ear. So they gave me a little fake gun, because they definitely shouldn't have given me a real one at that time. They gave me this little fake gun that when you pull the trigger, it sounds off on these things. They took me through there, and I'm going through, and I'm looking for the person, and these things pop out, and it's either civilian or it's a real person, not a real person, it's a civilian or it's a suspect. Man, I shot about 13 civilians. Adrenaline, right? I was charged up, and I thought I was doing the right thing, and what it told me was some of these officers, they're human, right? They want to go home, and they get in these situations, and so I want to be mindful of that when I think about these officers. So in Columbine, I think it was Columbine, the S.R.O. in that school took off. He ran, right? So for those people who think that automatically because you have an S.R.O. in the building, he has a gun, then it's going to serve as a deterrent to people trying to come into the building to do harm, well, they're human. There's no automatic. Having a gun doesn't automatically make you safe, nor does it deter people who want to do harm. If they want to do harm, they're going to do harm. So for me, the argument that people put on the table of S.R.Os automatically to stop people from coming into the building, that's a false argument. It really just depends on the individual. No different than if you had a safety officer who was properly trained, he too would serve as a deterrent potentially. It doesn't always take that. Do we have any other questions or comments? Ms. Hannah.
good Sunday to everybody. Um, I'm just going to do a little backstory regarding SROs. And I've been in the school district as a school board member for 28 years. And we used to have SROs in the school district, okay? The difference then and now, the SROs came from out of the juvenile department. They were juvenile officers. And so they had the experience, knowledge to deal with young people off the top, right? One of the other things, they were not always in their uniforms when they came into the to the high schools, and that was the first place that they were, the first and only place that they were in the high schools, right? The third thing that's different is that the school district and principals, they had the opportunity to interview the SROs before they were chosen. And even though the police department had the officers that they would send, right, the school and particular people would interview them before they came into the school, okay? Somebody said about Mr. Springs said something in terms of, are they supposed to be educators? Well, actually everybody that walks in those schools are educators, okay, in one form or fashion. And I guess I'm kind of biased because I have always tried in my dealings with young people over the years, trying to make students understand that police are there for safety, for law and order. Okay, you don't do anything to become involved, engaged in police, you don't have to worry about them, right? That may have changed. Other people may have different opinions. Anyway, so the SROs that are now, and I'm not a fan of it, it's more like they are police state, that that they come in, number one, all garbed up with their uniforms, with their belts, with their guns, all that stuff, okay? I'm trying to just remember back, I don't think that that when SROs first started, I don't even think that they had guns visible, okay? It's hard to recall, but it seems like, you know, they weren't visible. And they were in there to enhance students, bring something to help contribute to the success of the students. And so we kind of have to, or parents, okay, are so very, very important in all aspects of their child's education, and they should be involved in the school district, okay? I've been taking notes, and the lady that talked about the training of the SROs, we need to know what that is. Parents need to know what that is. People need to ask the questions, and not of the school district, because we don't know. But the school district needs to put forth the expectations for the SROs and what we want to see. And I don't mean that the expectations need to be put there. What does the school district expect from the SROs? You know, and so does anybody know, Alderman, do we still have a juvenile police force? Okay, and so we need to make sure that if those officers specifically come from out of juvenile, they'll have a breadth of knowledge of how to deal with children. And so I'm just saying, I don't know why they would be, because you spoke about the Fifth Amendment. I'm not sure truly what that kind of meant, you know, in terms of our children, because a parent, a guardian, they have to be notified before a police officer can talk to a student. Now, whether it is being practiced or not, you understand? I can't say, okay? But that's the way it's supposed to be.
Go ahead, Coach.
Miss Hannah, I love you. You know I love you. Two things. One, some of the stuff I trust you to do as a school board. I should not have to be at every school board meeting. That's why we have a school board, because we trust you to be our representative to the school. I don't need to be at every city council meeting. I trust you. That's why we vote you in. Because if I got to be at every one, then it's a true democracy. Every individual has to make every individual decision. And we're not a true democracy. We're a republic. We have representatives that are supposed to represent our needs. Miss Hannah, I have to tell you this. My daughter saw someone get stabbed in the class. That's when I was on TV, because I had to lose it. I told my child, don't say another word to nobody there. They told my child, the S.R.Os, the staff and all that, you have to tell us what happened. Stop immediately. That's why I'm on the TV, because I had to lose it. So once I gathered myself, I had to tell my child again, shut up talking to them people. Those adults with a gun, with a badge, with so-called authority, you don't answer to any of them, you answer to me. The staff can intimidate our children into talking too much. Because someone with a gun, we understand that someone with a gun can tell someone to have sex with them, and we can understand that, well, she wanted to do it. You had a gun, bruh. It ain't the same. It's not the same for a person in a position of authority to have someone do something they may not have wanted to do. We're asking children that don't know how much toilet paper costs to fight against someone with a gun, someone with authority, and to be able to hold their own is inappropriate. We have an inappropriate expectation for them. And then we wonder why they don't respect authority, because we have too much authority that does not respect our children. So I'm in it all the way. I've been, okay, I said 30 years of me and then my children and grandchildren and all that, but I'm still here because we need more help. And the SROs, are not for the benefit of our children. And I honestly believe that the SROs are the same reason that I have police called on me in the mall, because that lady's scared of me. That lady saw my black self, and she had fear of my blackness. So the police officers become their dog. Let me get my dog on you. And I believe in the school, and I believe we're fighting against not the school board, but the teachers union. I believe they have some influence on this S.R.O thing. And I know McIntyre helped me dig on it a little bit more, but I can see where the teachers union would have something to do with that. We could get you a dog over there. We get you a couple people with guns in there. You could teach a walk kicking. You'll be safe. But we did give them a 22% raise. Am I correct? It did. Oh, my fault. They got 26% raise.
So to the, just a little bit of an elaborate, I'm sorry. Okay.
I got.
Before you do, let me just address something that you said, Ms. Hannah. The Fifth Amendment piece. So you said, what's the connection? Everyone has a right to avoid self-incrimination.
Right.
So when you have someone with a gun, as Coach is just saying, and you stand next to me and I just got into a fight, you know, that same thing, if it was done on the street, is a crime. Technically, it's just as much a crime there. And if you have the cop standing next to me and I talk in front of this officer about this crime, it triggers certain things, right? So I want to ensure that the Fifth Amendment right that everyone enjoys also applies to the children. Mm-hmm. And as a result of the Ant-Man Foundation primarily being an advocate for dozens of children throughout this area, I mean, this is one of my advocate clients right here, you know, who Coach is just talking about. You know, these are people that I have to come out and help support on behalf of their families because they feel like they can't go up against the police department. You also spoke to the training that Ms. Owens was just speaking about. So for those in the community that don't really understand this, the school board has 2 employees, 2, general counsel and the superintendent. The board isn't responsible for the day-to-day operations of a school district. The superintendent is. So when it comes to these MOUs, Memorandum of Understandings for those in the community, the MOU is the contract between the school district and the city. In this
intergovernmental agreement.
The intergovernmental agreement,
like a contract.
And the MOU, they're joined at the hip to me. It's a contract between the two. It explains what the relationship dynamic is going to be, right? So with that contract that's in place, what you speak about when it comes to the training, well, how about that get implemented into the contract?
Agreed.
And if it is, at that point, it's about enforcement. So at that point, the school district would then pass on to parents the answer to the question that was just posed, which is, this is the training that these individuals were required to have. Right. If they don't, they wouldn't be in the school, or they shouldn't be in the school. So I just wanted to make sure that those 2 points were made clear. There is a responsibility on the board to oversee the superintendent, who's responsible for operations on a day-to-day basis. And if that dynamic is in play, then what Coach said becomes more relevant. Everybody in the community, the thousands of people in Waukegan, are not expected to be at a board meeting or a city council meeting. That's why we have representation. So you would know what your constituents want, and then you would take that to the board, and then collectively you all would tell the superintendent, this is what I expect of you. And with that direction, the superintendent would oblige because she's your employee. That's the way we would think that would go. It doesn't always happen that way, and young people want to know why.
Yeah.
But I want to, Ms. Hannah, we had someone here who had the mic for a while, so if you don't mind. Can you grab that mic, please? Oh, you have one, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Pretty much for the time that I was trying to make a point, a few people touched on what I was going to touch on. One, the qualifications of an S.R.O. It seems like the waters are very muddy across the board. of students and parents as to what an SRO is. We know that everyone wasn't even aware of it until before a week ago or within this past week. And with that being said, I have 2 high schoolers at Washington when they were at Brookside, and the times that I came in and out of the building to pick them up for appointments and different events. I saw the SRO that was there, and I do a lot of watching. I watched how the security officers moved, and I know that at the beginning of the year, especially when they were freshmen at Brookside, things were very stringent. Everybody was on their post, everybody was crossing their T's and dotting their I's, security, especially with the physical, taking off the purse, the phones, and all of that, the pat down and everything. Before Christmas time, it got real lax over at Brookside, which made me very unsettled. Even when I came into the building as a visitor, I was being bypassed through 50% of the security that I should have gone through. And by the end of the year, it was all the way out the window. Now that they're at Washington campus, I got my antenna up and I'm a little bit anxious. New building, new atmosphere, and now with this issue of, oh no, SROs are in place, it's not settling right with me. So, but listening to all of the points that people have made here today, I've been educated because that impact on the student rights part is a part that I wasn't very versed in on what an SRO is. And so I think that if little old me has some confusion and mud in my mind about the true definition of what the SRO is supposed to represent, I would say that a lot of parents and students just are like, wait, what? I thought that was like a DARE officer. I mean, we can keep going with what people's perception of an SRO truly is. I come from the era of DARE officers. That was my first presence of having police law enforcement in my school building. That was in 6th grade. But they came with the briefcase and all of the fake drugs. And they educated about drugs. And that was awesome because I remember being more in line, having that presence there. And they were uniformed. And then over the years, we had safety officers evolve. You're gonna have your kids, you know, some are gonna respect that title and that presence, and others are gonna be like, well, man, what them flashlight cops doing here with the yellow jacket with security on the back? What you gonna do, throw your jacket at me? They don't really respect it. Then we get to that fine line of officers fully uniformed with a weapon. That's a whole nother ball of wax. And with the climate across the country in school buildings with violence and today's millennials getting into these melees and kerfuffles and getting froggy enough to come physically towards uniformed officers, it is a slippery slope. So here's what I feel. I feel the district needs to revisit, as you said, ma'am, the polling parents and students. What are your thoughts on the matter? And I do believe they need to bridge the gap and in a fair and equitable way, get a good percentage of who has cast a vote, okay? Then from there, we need clarity on what these officers are supposed to represent. What are the qualifications? What should their education be? Definitely the piece about the officer being versed in juveniles, that's huge. You can't just throw somebody in off the force who has no education or training on how to interact with youth. And I mean all youth. Youth of all colors and all shades, all backgrounds. That is key because that's one of the reasons we have so many youth who have that anti-5-0 mentality. It doesn't matter what the presence may be. We have a lot of our youth in the schools who don't care. They look at the police department and law enforcement as public enemy number one. And the district, the parents, and the students need to be educated and get to a forum where we are on the same ground. We are not enemies, you know? And so I don't even know at this point. I thought coming in the door, I was pro SRO. Now that I've sat here and listened to all of these different points, there are some pros, but the cons are equaling up with the pros. So I'm, you know, kind of split on it. But I definitely feel like full disclosure from the district as to qualifications, education, background, salary, it needs to all be put out there so that all parties involved are aware, and then we can make an informed decision on whether or not this is something that is going to, you know, benefit all of the district or not. And another question I have is this: are the SRO positions just only piped in for the high school level? What about the elementary and the middle schools?
To answer the last question, they're only in the high schools. There's only one high school. We have 2 campuses. Oh, I'm sorry. Where we have middle. So Mr. Zabecki is going to respond to that more thoroughly.
So back when I went to school, and at the middle schools had some middle schools had officers, some had floating officers. Like Officer Jones, back when I went to school, he was at Benny, and he did travel to the other school districts. I believe last year they upped it to 3, 2, 1 at each high school, and then there's supposed to be 1 that floats between the middle schools. That's what it's supposed to be.
Okay. So my point was that there are 2 permanent SROs at the high schools. We want to give the young lady the opportunity to say a few words, so go ahead, ma'am.
I am a student at the Waukegan High School. I have had an interaction with the SRO that was at Brookside last year, to where I was questioned in a hallway. And they talk about how, oh, you're supposed to feel safe. How am I supposed to feel safe if I'm being questioned by someone who says that I'm supposed to feel safe? Because they were accusing me of something I was not involved in. They didn't tell me that I had the right to not answer questions. And I've spoken at the board meeting about it. And I feel like they aren't hearing the fact that a student in their own school is stating they aren't comfortable with the fact that there's an SRO, a officer in the school. Because, like the statements I've made, they have guns. I heard about an incident that happened where a girl went and tried grabbing the officer's gun in a fight. And they talk about how, oh, they're there to keep you safe. It's not keeping us safe. It's giving kids more ammunition to try and get closer to the officer. And it's not even keeping us safe. The officer at Brookside didn't really do anything. Anytime I seen her, she was sitting down. The one at Washington was a better officer than the one we had at Brookside. And I honestly don't think they should have the SROs in the school, because it doesn't make me feel safe. It makes me feel like there's a reason why I shouldn't go to school. And I shouldn't have to feel like I shouldn't be able to I shouldn't feel safe at school. School is supposed to be a place you're supposed to feel safe in. But with the officer being there, I don't feel safe. I'm starting my sophomore year after a very bad freshman year because of starting with the incident with the SRO that caused more problems with staff in the school, because the staff are more scared of the students than the students are of the staff. And that is what is sad.
So just to dig a little deeper into it, so listen, we have a bunch of adults in the room, right? A bunch of adults talking to a bunch of adults when the matter is really more directly involving the young people. So to get a young person's point of view and perspective is like vitally important to the conversation. So you heard what she just said. I'm fully aware of the situation. I want you guys to have a clearer picture of what she's talking about. This is someone there was a shooting outside of the school somewhere, had nothing to do with the school. Someone put information out that there was involvement here. She's grabbed out of class. She's brought to, here's the S.R.O, and you have a conversation where she's actually interrogated in the hallway. Interrogated in the hallway. Why do I say interrogated? You questioning this kid about an incident. That's an interrogation to me, right? Her parent wasn't present. I'm her advocate. I wasn't present. And this is what happened. Now, luckily, she had nothing to do with the incident in the first place. I say luckily. What if she had? She was having a conversation about a crime that they allege she had involvement with. What if that was true? And she talked, said something that incriminated herself. Ms. Hannah, Fifth Amendment, that's where it comes from. We have to be mindful of the impact of these things, and I think that's vitally important for us to get. So that's that point. Who else had the mic?
I did. I just want to clarify something, Coach. Well, you know, I've been representing the people forever here in Waukegan when it comes to our children, okay? And just to let you all know, 2 years ago, I represented Waukegan, and I voted as a delegate in the at the Illinois State Board of Education conference. I voted against having guns in schools. I voted again the last time they brought it up. I voted again no. Okay, but I am one out of 300-400 other people. But it did not pass the first time, right? It narrowly was defeated the second time. Unfortunately, it did pass, but that came more from downstate schools, rural schools, where they don't have the resources like we do, right? But I don't want people to misunderstand. If the children are not comfortable with the police being there, those are the ones that we should listen to, okay? Now, they can do what they do, right? Listen what I'm saying. The students, they say, we don't want them here. We don't want them in our schools. Then our students are going to have to step up and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do so that there's no reason for them to be there. But I also have to say 9/11, that was one. All these active shooters in other school districts, other states, all of that is like a domino effect. Everybody got to get on panic mode and all that. Well, I am proud to say Waukegan has been blessed without having to have any of those type incidents in our school district. And so representation, I'm always going to represent the people, first and foremost, the children, and everybody else within that school district. Okay? That's my job, and I think I do it pretty well. So, but thank you.
So listen, we have, it's going on 3 o'clock. I definitely want to respect everybody's time. I'm going to cap this at about 30 more minutes tops, and then we'll wrap this up. Who else had a question back there? Clyde?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You got a question up there, school to prison pipeline. I just heard stories about students getting arrested and fighting. And I go back and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm a little old. But I remember when I was in school, how many fights did I have? Springs, how many fights you had in school? Yeah. You had 4. So that's 4 times. How many you had, Mr. Turner? Yeah, I know, because we went South Shore, so we had to fight. How many did you have? You had 2. I can't even count. I can't remember. But the point I'm trying to bring out is, did none of us get arrested for fighting in school? But the difference today, and you go to, and I'm going to hit the school to prison pipeline. I heard Coach Springs say 15 guys was jumping in. They fighting, a bunch of guys, okay? Let's take 10 of them. 10 of them got arrested, right? You and Anthony had to go down there to court and everything, right? They could have beat their case. But guess what? They got booked, didn't they? They got fingerprinted. They got their pictures taken and everything. They in the system. Even though they beat that case, they still in the system. This is why we don't need these S.R.Os in the school, because they're putting and majority, and I did the, Ms. Hannah can vouch for this, I know Anthony can. I did a survey, well, I did a FOIA, and most of the kids that get locked up here in Waukegan or arrested are black and brown children. I mean, we got over 60% brown in the school, but it's all over. And that's what I'm saying. These kids now, they got this little record. They beat the case in school. Now they walking down the street, they got a hoodie on. They might be smoking a blunt. They 17, 18 years old. It's legal now. But they walking down the street. Or they had a fight. Or they having loud music. Police now get them. So when he get them an ID, they in the system. It's the school to prison pipeline. I just want to give an example because I heard some people say that they wanted the S.R.Os there. You know, I've been a big advocate against them. We sat on a panel, me and you, Anthony, about what they can do and what they cannot do. It took us almost a year to get it done, and I still don't agree with it. But I had to go with something. And I sat on that panel for a whole year, and we met, twice a month and everything, and we couldn't get nothing done because everybody want to do things. I said, take them out. I said it back then. Thanks for letting me speak.
So go ahead. Can we get a microphone over here, please?
Can I speak? I've been waiting a while. Please, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Mr. Turner.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm Keith Turner. I'm a 6th Ward Alderman, but I'm going to speak to you as a citizen and taxpayer, not as Alderman Turner. All right, so I think this is a very valuable discussion, and I really had hoped that more people would be here. Anthony, thanks for hosting as usual. You know, I came here because, the reason this came about is because of this contract dispute between the school and the school district and the city of Waukegan, the mayor's office, all right? And so that's why I came to specifically focus on that. And I'm very, I'm glad that we've had this more broader discussion and there's some edification on what the school resource officers are and all that. So I'm in favor of this discussion. But on a level set for you, regardless of what you call these police officers, they are police officers. You can give them any other title you want, right? So you go to Walmart, you see a cop standing over there, he's in uniform, he's off duty, he's a police officer. And he or she is always going to be a police officer above all else. So whatever expectation you might have in their capacity as a school resource officer is all going to be subservient to their role and their position, their title, their authority, their obligation as a police officer. So in that role, they are going to enforce the law. Now, there may be some deviations, if you will. I don't know if that's the appropriate word, but I'll use it. Some deviations in how they perform their duties, or if they're going beyond the scope of their duty. Maybe they're doing extra, maybe they're doing too much, and it ain't right. I get it. But I just want you to keep that in mind. No matter what you call them, you remember officer friendly? He's a friendly officer, but he's still a police officer. And also keep this in mind. If we're, in some of these incidents that you guys have described, and I wasn't there, I don't know, but I just take the other side of that. What might have happened had not the school resource officer been there to break up a fight? Or I know one of my neighbors works in the school district, and he said three kids had him in the corner slapping him upside the head. If the school resource, how far would that go? Anyway, I'd like to go back to where we started with this discussion about this contract dispute. Man, and when I first heard about it, I was like, it didn't even make sense to me because of the progression in the chart, the cost that was being put on the school district. So I think the number said it started at $70,000. That's up to $120,000. School district offered $150,000, and the mayor wants $350,000. It's like a 36% increase over what was, right? And then I put on my taxpayer hat and said, well, I pay property tax to the city for police officers. That guys and those gals' salary and benefits come out of my property tax, okay? But then they get assigned to the school district. And my property tax pays the school district. And then the school district, so I'm paying twice. I'm paying for that police officer twice on both sides. I pay the city, then I pay the school district for that same officer. I don't like it. That's how I got involved in politics in the first place. I don't like all them taxes. They didn't paint the yellow curb, and I didn't like that. So, but anyway, I just want to put that on your mind. Police officer is a police officer, above all else, and nothing else, right? And two, keep your eye on the dollars. That's the important piece that we are losing focus on. Now, the rest of the discussion is valid and important. It's all very important, but I just want you to keep your focus too. Don't lose focus on this contract negotiation and dispute. Okay, thank you.
A key thing with the Fifth Amendment point, I think we don't know a lot about the law. And I think in the state of Illinois, you don't have to have a parent present to speak to these kids. The police officers do not have to have a parent present, but they are supposed to attempt to notify the parent. And I think one of the biggest factors along with what Mr. Turner just said is we have to teach these kids to shut up or lawyer up. You know what I'm saying? In the midst of all of this going on, if the S.R.Os are voted to stay in the schools or whatever the case may be, she was brought into the hallway and interrogated and everything. They have every right to ask them all the questions that they want to, but if your child don't know that they don't have to talk, they're going to, because they are a child and they have a childlike mind. I'm just going to answer these questions, and if I answer these questions, I'm going to be out of this situation. And that's not technically the truth. So it is so important to tell these kids, you know what, I don't want to say anything. Give me a lawyer, give me my mom, give me my dad. And even when you say give me my mom and my dad, they don't have to do that. So tell them shut up or lawyer up if it's something as serious as needing a lawyer. And even if they are even just speaking as a witness, if they can't figure out what they're doing, they're going to harass you as a witness. So just shut up. And it's so important to teach our kids that don't say nothing, you don't have to. And then the lawyer will instruct you what to do throughout this process. And I think that's really important to teach our kids, especially these kids in high school, because we don't know what they're facing. There's a lot of different things that's happening in these schools that we didn't experience when we were in high school. So it's just really important to just teach them what's real and what's fake. That, oh, I don't have to talk to you till my mama get here. That's fake. They can tell you, they can ask you all these questions. Your mama's not that important, it's actually the lawyer. You know what I'm saying? So just keep that in mind with this conversation as well.
I want to say, just because what Jessamine just said, I want to give a different spin to it, if you will, because there's a difference between the school administration asking questions of these young people and the police asking questions to these young people. If you're talking about a school infraction, like a fight, the school can ask whatever they want. The police officer is a different dynamic, right? So I want to make sure that much is made very clear. What the school does that I find troubling, that seems to match with what law enforcement does sometimes, is to almost immediately when something happens, they inquire or push for them to sign statements. Right. I don't know if many of you parents know this. They actually ask the kids to make a statement. What do y'all think goes on with that statement? Like, who do they give it to? So you have this intergovernmental agreement that Ms. Hannah was just talking about, and now you have to ask yourselves, because they have a information sharing type of a thing going on between the school district and the police department, well, do they share that statement? Well, now that they have that statement, it becomes a matter of record. What happens with that record? Is it going to be as evidence in court if the inevitable court situation takes place? You really have to think about it. So we want to maybe put a magnifying glass on the intergovernmental agreement between the two entities to see how much information is shared. If you can't, as law enforcement, get a warrant for certain information from these young people, do you simply circumvent that by going to the school and saying, let me get in their record? Can you do that? The question is valid. It's something that parents need to dig into a little bit. What does the intergovernmental agreement allow the school district to give in the form of information on your student, on your child, to the police department? The school district knows who his friends are, who he hangs out with. They know the addresses to those locations. I want to just show you how easy you're making it for law enforcement to track down information that otherwise they would have had to have gotten a warrant for. So that's the point. Ms. Springs.
I just first wanted to say this. I commend you for speaking, one, as a child in a group full of adults, because your point is the point that actually really matters. People, you know, we're parents. Your kids talk too much, because we have several of them that do, and the first thing we want to say is, just shut up. Not shut up talking to the police. Shut up talking to me, right? Because they keep saying stuff, and this right here, most of that is not making sense until it does, until it's something like that. As a parent, as a grandparent, I'm a grandparent with a child in the Waukegan public school system. I don't care how much it costs to train the security staff with the yellow jackets. Make their jackets black, give them a little piece of a badge or whatever, so that it appears that they have the authority that they need to have, so that these children don't have to talk to the police, because they might not know. I'm frazzled. I'm scared. My mom and dad are not here. I don't know what to, and these teachers, some of them who don't live anywhere around here, who hurry up and get in the car at whatever time school is out, 3:15, 2:45, whatever, and go back to where they live, right? You don't really care about these babies. So make it make sense. I'm a huge proponent of children and them being able to speak their piece, being able to be safe in it, being able to feel like what I'm saying matters, unless and until you start talking to your parent too much about some stuff that we ain't trying to hear, right? But I don't care, because if something happens to one of these kids, whether it's the kid that belongs to me or not, if something happens at the hands of the police inside the school, then nobody did it. It's nobody's fault. Well, what? Well, what? In the case that my husband was speaking about with the young man, who is a large young man, but the absolute sweetest, most he's a good young man. But because of what he looked like, he was a threat. He was a threat to that little old police lady who thought she was going to do something. Let's just be real. Let's be real. If you thought you needed to apprehend him or try to stop him from doing whatever it was, getting all these other people off him. Now, I've been married to this man for a long time, so I say what I feel like I need to say. A lot of times I don't say anything. Y'all don't see me, y'all don't hear from me unless you come to township. But as one person with 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 20 people on your back, if I'm getting the better of you, of at least 10 of y'all, and now the police officer feels like she needs to jump on my back to try to stop me, then that's not, what is he supposed to do? He didn't have an opportunity until y'all stepped in to be protected. And that's the whole thing. They have to be protected. They have to be. Because otherwise, no, I don't want to go to school. And as a parent, no, maybe you don't have to go to school. Or maybe now I need to take you out of this district and put you somewhere else. But then when that happens, if you don't live where those boundaries are, you might end up in jail or something trying to get your child to a better place when all we want is for our children to be safe. Let them be safe. Let them obtain an education that is going to help them. I don't want my grandson to know more about the police than he does about history. Why? Unless he's going to be a police officer, and then he still needs to know about history. But when what you see may not have anything to do with an officer in school, but when they go in somebody's house and kill them because of a pot of water, I'm just going to say it, how safe should the kids feel at school? They didn't do anything either. But I might end up dead because I moved too quick, or I didn't move quick enough, or whatever. My whole point in this was, young lady, I don't know your name, but kudos to you and your mom for allowing you to speak your piece and for making sure that you were heard. And I think that all of our children, all of them, should be heard, especially with regards to how they feel. When we were in school, right, the teachers actually cared about us. They were from around here. We went to church with them, whatever. They grew up with our parents. We dared not say, you better not say something slick, and you better not act like you're going to do something that you know you have no business doing. So because they cared about us, we were very mindful of what we were doing and who and where we were doing it. And our principals cared about us. The security officers, Jeff McBride was at our school forever. He cared about us, and he would tell your parent. And that was another thing. I feared my mother. I'm 52 years old. I'm still scared of my mama. So, like, it just, there's a such thing as just being cautious and being mindful, and everybody needs to do that with regards to these children. That's
just a little bit further into that point. When it comes to the SROs and fights in the school, I think we should ask ourselves, should SROs be breaking up fights anyway? In the midst of a fight, you can't, like, the safety officers don't have a tool belt, or I'm gonna call it a tool belt. They don't have that. There's nothing to take off of it in the middle of a fight. You can't feel it. You have weapons on that thing. And if you're in the middle of what they call a melee or just a regular fight, those kids are not slow. I mean, if their aim is to harm, you helping that. You know, so for me, my understanding is that SROs don't activate until called upon. That's what they're supposed to do. You should go sit over there somewhere, and if it rises to a level, because we have safety officers whose job it is to do all of that stuff. And when we need you, we'll call you. But right now, you sometimes have officers that just get in the middle of things, and then you wonder why things go wrong. Well, it's a fight. Like in the situation that they're talking about, I don't know who's on my back. I'm gonna get it off, you know? And in the midst of that, if you fall and hurt your butt, I mean, that's assault on a police officer now. And that's what he was charged with, assault on a police officer because you fell in the midst of breaking up a fight. It wasn't a punch. You fell. If the safety officer had fell, it wouldn't have been a charge to him because he's in the middle of his job. Mr. Sebeki?
All right. So my theory on all this, SROs, whatever you want to call them, in the schools, it's a catch-22. There's pros, there's cons. There always will be, there always was. When I went to school, I want to say 80, 20%, the officer was in professional attire. His weapon hidden under his coat. You know, back in the days where, you know, dress codes and that, where people actually look professional. Like you said, most of the teachers, most of the principals are not from here anymore. You know, they would tell our parents and we'd be scared. You know, and that's what it goes down to. But as Mr. Springs was saying, when you do have a fight, you know, 10, 15 people jumped on one kid, and that kid's swinging, like you said earlier, how many civilians did you shoot? It's fight or flight. You don't know who it is. You can ask that kid after it's all done, like, do you remember seeing that police officer? No. And I've been on both sides. You know, I was in law enforcement, and it does happen. And not only that, now an officer is involved. Now they hit their radio. They got an emergency button on the radio. All they got to do is push it. And that goes over the whole police band. Exactly where that officer's location is. Now the adrenaline's pumping in every officer, clearing scene, you know, whatever calls they're on, and everyone's racing there. So that all their adrenaline's pumping when they get there. You know, so it is a catch-22. Same thing when we talk about basketball, football games. If we don't want them in the schools, we got to stop having them show up at these games in uniform, in, you know, tactical gear. And we all know, we've been at high school games and that, where a lot of them come in their tactical gear. You know, it sets precedents. You know, we need to get back into where we were. You know, it is. It's all about the right officers being in the schools, because there are some great SROs, you know. And, you know, I'll say the one in Zion, one's my father's business, I can't even think of his name now. You know, there are ones that have their own, Matt Thornton, has their own things and know these juveniles, work with them in the streets, and have buried a lot of these juveniles. And, you know, and that's what it is. And I'm going to be straight up. Take the SRO out of it. And I tell my kids, the exact same thing. I don't care who you are, cop, principal, security officer, anyone of authority. They question you, the only words that come out your mouth is, have you called my dad? I'm not saying a word until you call my dad. Just for those reasons, because we don't know what information is being shared. Because even if there's a fight or a kid's being threatened, even the schools are having these kids do written statements and writing it down. And I know because it happened to my son the other day. And we don't know what's being shared. And that's, I don't care who you are. Those are the words that come out my kid's mouth. Don't say a word until you say, if they can keep asking a question 100 times, just keep repeating the statement. Eventually, they all know how to get a hold of me, and I'll tell you what you can and cannot say after I talk to you first, you know. And that's what I encourage all parents to do, no matter what it is. Like I said, I don't care if it's a police officer, administrator, or whatever, because things are always spinned. Data's not always accurate. We heard about the survey. I remember the survey, but exactly how many took the survey? We know data's always changed and is not accurate. You know, how does my son's attendance records, they said the attendance is 98% in this, but, you know, my kid's at home with COVID, but in school, he's marked present for 8 of his classes. How is that possible? So how is that data correct? That's my point, and I bring it up at all school meetings all the time, where they talk about all this data. Anybody can change the data. You know, if you want the data to look good, you're going to change it in your favor. And that's where it comes down. And I want to just money is always going to be a topic. I don't care where it comes from because, like Mr. Turner said, it's us getting charged on both sides. To me, split it because they do have a responsibility. If they're going to be in there, it should be split because you still have the responsibility to be there. But then here's my other question. Tomorrow on the city agenda, there's an intergovernment agreement with Park City to house anyone that they arrest at the Waukegan jail because Lake County is understaffed and don't do it. Now, who's paying for that? That's my point. Is Park City paying for our personnel to watch their inmates? Because they're not going to be physically present unless they have to go to the hospital, unless they have to do this. So if we're going to have these department agreements, then they need to be fair for everybody. Park City should be paying for our police officers, who's ever at that jail watching the detainees, should also be paying the city of Waukegan. Those are our tax dollars that pay for them. So they should also be in charge for them. Not if they get hurt, then they, if you read the agreement, it says they go to the hospital immediately if they send an officer. No, it's still costing our personnel to watch them at the jail. So they should also be paying. We got to stop this. Everyone sees this. The school district, I'll say it, likes to waste money and spend it on all this, and people see the waste of money. Same thing with the city, depending on what it is. There's a lot of waste of money, and then everyone sees this, and then everyone wants a piece of it. Hey, if you're finna give it out, then you know what? We'll make something up too, so we get paid. Money's always going to be the biggest thing, whether we all want to admit it or not. It should be about the kids, the safety of the staff and students, and that. But we look at the picture. Always going to follow the money, no matter what profession we're in, what job we're in. It's always about the money.
All right, so I'm going to leave you guys with something because we're coming up on 3:30. So the school to prison pipeline is, to me, very real. The Ant Mound Foundation has a program, it's called BASE, Behavior, Academic, Social, Emotional Program. What it's geared towards is young people who are suspended from school, instead of them going home, which they don't go home, they go to the block and get themselves in trouble. Instead of that happening, we have it set up for them to be able to come to our location, serve out their suspension, still receive your schoolwork, complete your schoolwork. If you complete your schoolwork, the hope is that the school district is going to rescind your suspension, right? That's a big deal. It's something to take advantage of. The biggest contributor to the school to prison pipeline is suspended kids. Suspended kids got suspended because they were talking to individuals and they had an infraction. We're talking right now about this topic of the S.R.Os and who do you give that information to? If it's simply the school resource, if it's simply the culture and climate specialist here in Waukegan, that's one thing. At the very moment that that information is shared with the law enforcement official at that point, you are instantaneously in the school to prison pipeline. That pipeline is pressurized by those young people. We want to get them out of it. It's necessary. The adults, the local parentis piece is very important. We need to protect the young people and their rights. They have them. It's funny listening to some of this conversation because young people think themselves to be smarter than everybody. So they get in these conversations with staff members and they're asking them a lot of questions and they answer them quick because they think it makes them the friend. So they make statements. Why would I not? Right? I want you to like me because it might pad my credit card. When I get in trouble next month, you'll remember what I did last month. You'll let me out of the trouble. That's what they may think. It doesn't work that way. So be mindful of the conversations that you have with your young people. Make sure that they understand that simply to not answer questions doesn't make you combative. It's simply as you exercising the rights that you were born with in this country. And we just simply need to make sure that we pass that on to our young people. I think the school district needs to also consider, where law enforcement is concerned, how about you bring them in and make them tell the kids what their rights are? How about that? When you get your freshman, sophomore classes when they come in, let law enforcement come in. Let's have some defense attorneys come in along with them so we can make sure they're giving out accurate information. Right? This is the thing that I hope that the board would instruct its employee to do if that's something that we recognize is valuable and needs to be heard. Young people need to hear the information, because I promise you, they're not going to let you forget that they know something, right? So with that being said, I just want to thank everybody for coming out. This has been, I think, very informative. For those individuals who are home looking at this online, I want to thank you all for tuning in as well. We have an interesting staff here, and we'll make sure that we'll put together a nice package of videos so that we can make sure that everybody that wasn't able to tune in now will be able to see it at a later date. So with that being said, thank you on behalf of the Ant Mound Foundation for coming out and for tuning in. You guys enjoy your day.